Today, we're joined by a great cast of panelists from various different backgrounds in business and the public sector that could talk about it. And so I'm going to introduce the panelists, and then we'll kind of go into each of their segments, and then we'll go into a Q&A. Everybody fired up to talk about housing? Awesome. So my name is Elias, Benjelloun, and I'm so excited to be here. I don't own a home yet. I'm 26 years old, and I work for Homeownership, a real estate tech company, as their social impact manager. And I'm excited to introduce to y'all Girma, who's from the Nevada Housing Division, and also the chair of the Coalition to Make Homes Possible, an initiative geared towards helping 25,000 Black families get on the path towards home ownership over the next 10 years to close our state's racial home ownership gap. Also, we have David Dahl, who is a developer who flew in from Reno to be a part of this and is really involved in developing big projects in the north. We're also joined by Diane Arvizo, who represents Home at Last from the Nevada Rural Housing Authority. And we're also joined by Rick Barron from Signature Homes and the president of the Southern Nevada Home Builders Association. Could we give it up for our panelists? Okay, and so the panelists have prepared some opening remarks, and so we're going to go through each of them, and then we've got a couple questions that we're going to dive in. So first, I'd like to pass the floor over to Diane Arvizo for an introduction.
Thank you, Elias. And hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Diane Arvizo. I'm the Director of Homeownership Programs for the Nevada Rural Housing Authority. I've been with Nevada Rural Housing for 6 years, almost 7 actually. Bill, it's time for a raise. That's my boss right there in the front row. And I know, I'm telling you. So at Nevada Rural Housing, I came over from USDA single family side. So I've been in housing for a long, long time, and I love it. It's in my blood, but also rural is in my blood because I grew up on a dairy farm. So I love that homeownership means something different for everyone, whether it's in rural or urban areas. The Nevada Rural Housing has a homeownership program called Home at Last. And Jeneeah over here with the Home is Possible program, we're like sister agencies doing lots of great things across the state. But we do provide a below market interest rate for people who don't need down payment assistance. We provide up to 5% of a loan amount for people who do need down payment assistance. We provide mortgage tax credits that help qualified homebuyers, first-time homebuyers, and qualified veterans don't have to be first-time homebuyers, with receiving an average of $2,000 back in tax credits, which could actually pay an extra mortgage payment, am I right? And homebuyer education, which is, of course, the cornerstone for successful home ownership. The Home at Last program is delivered through participating lenders all across Nevada and supported and served very well by trained and certified real estate agents across Nevada. Our program launched in 2006 and has helped over 10,000 rural Nevadans become homeowners. We do have a responsibility. I'm going to laugh, actually. I'm going to go back to the whole housing is. I kind of had to chuckle this morning because there's so many great words about housing is, and you can think of a million. But I am a little bit of a jokester, not always at the appropriate time. I'm thinking housing is expensive. Sorry, boss, but it is. And so we have a responsibility to help people who are creditworthy and have stable income to have access to affordable homeownership opportunities, although not everyone needs to be a homeowner, right? So home prices have reached a 14-year high, so people are going to have to wait, some of them anyway. That's just a fact that some people are going to have to sit back and wait for their opportunity to come. We're going to talk about a little of that today, I'm sure, Elias. But I do want to touch on the median home prices from September, just kind of to lay the groundwork of some of the homeownership topic we're going to have today. In September, the median home price in Las Vegas was $407,000. I'm sure many of you know that. Up north in Reno, how about $530,000? Yeah, I live there. Wow. And yeah, I also just bought a house. How stupid am I? No, I'm just kidding. And in Sparks, which adjoins Reno, $504,000. And over in the bedroom community of Reno Sparks is Fernley, and $371,000. I did not think I would hear that, at least anytime soon. Over east in Elko, 290,000, much more affordable, but we got a lot of mining companies over there helping those folks afford homeownership. And then right next door in Pahrump, 335,000. So on the flip side, the rental prices are skyrocketing. So folks are going to kind of be stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? So how do we get renters involved in that process of preparing for homeownership if they're going to have to wait? How many times do we hear that people don't qualify for a home because they just financed a brand new car? So what are we going to do about this? There's lots of gaps to homeownership. Obviously, housing stock is a huge obstacle. We all know that. That's part of the reason why many of us are here. Or either we want to finance a project or talk about how to get into it. So we need to work together to find some solutions to small programs that can help people who have obstacles, but we also need to focus on some education that will help people who maybe not are going to be buying right now, but they need to be home buyer ready when their opportunity comes around. So on that note, I'm going to let you pass it on to the next panelist.
Yeah, thank you so much, Diane. We're definitely going to dive into more of what you have to share. Let's pass the mic over to Jeneeah Girma so she could share some of her work from the sister agency.
Hello, everyone. Everything actually Diane said, you can pass me. I am with the Nevada Housing Division. As Elias mentioned, I am also wearing the hat as the co-chair of the Make Homes Possible Coalition. Which is a coalition that we launched in conjunction with many community members, many legislators, and private firms as well to create 25,000 new Black homeowners in the next 10 years. We did not talk about the volatility of the market before we got excited to launch this program, but we are still very much inspired. So in addition to that, I do represent the Nevada Housing Division, currently as a new affordable housing advocate. But previously, over the last 4 years, I was a representative for the Make Homes Possible program, which is a statewide program to provide down payment assistance to homebuyers who are eligible to purchase homes through standard mortgage financing, who make less than $105,000 a year and are purchasing homes that are less than $548,000. I wanted to mention those numbers because home is still possible. We, over the last 5 years since the inception of our program, we have helped approximately 28,000 Nevada families purchase homes and become homeowners. That is also includes over 1,000 veteran families, close to 2,000 at this point, use our program either for down payment assistance or through our special Home is Possible, a program for heroes program to provide 0% down payment assistance, but a below market interest rate. And then we also have a teachers program, which is near and dear and close to my heart, which is one of the best programs in town. It helps all Nevada public school teachers who are classroom teachers from K to 12 purchase a home with $7,500 in down payment assistance and a below market interest rate. I believe our interest rate today is 2.5%. So it really is. We just ask that they stay in the home for 5 years, and we ask that they teach and are invested in the communities that they live and work in. So I mentioned all that to say that home is still possible. I am aware of how volatile the market is. I am aware of what our struggles are right now, but I am so passionate about home ownership for quite a few reasons, which I think Elias will get into shortly, but I am passionate about helping our veterans. I think the most disgusting thing in our country is to see veterans who are homeless or who have benefits and VA benefits available and are not able to use them because they simply are not aware or being fed really ridiculous myths in the industry about achieving a VA loan. I am also passionate about helping our minority community purchase homes. One of the biggest reasons for the gap in wealth amongst our community is the lack of home ownership in our minority families. And Nevada is a majority minority state. That means there are more minorities here than any other race in the state. So I believe that the demographics of our homeowners should represent the demographics of the people who are living, working, and making Nevada a better community each day. And so we'll get into that. And then I'm also a member of the Women's Council of NAREB, a National Association of Real Estate Brokers, which is the oldest trade organization, Black African-American trade organization in the country, and was started to help provide support and empowerment for real estate agents and education and financial literacy and scholarship. So that's a little bit about me. I could go on, but I'm going to share the mic and we'll get into some questions later.
Wow. Thank you so much, Jeneeah. We'll save our applause, I guess, for all of the panelists at the end. Jeneeah and Diane, thank you so much for joining us, representing the public sector. And we'll move on to the private sector with David Dahl from Reno.
Thank you. The purpose of the Nevada Housing Coalition is to empower organizations to make a difference. And so I'd like to talk about an opportunity for a lot of different organizations to make a difference today. You heard this morning about a land trust, and I'd like to expand further on the opportunities that different people have to participate in a land trust. I'm currently working with the Community Foundation of Northern Nevada to build 20 homes on land donated in the city of Reno. And so we're in the midst of that process now. We went through the approval process, and now we're gathering our bids. And that is a painful process to go through, because the price of lumber and everything else has went up so high that it blows the budget out of water. And then we find some smart way to save some money, and then the next day comes. And so it is always a challenge, but I'd like to present a way to go through this process. Traditionally, the way to provide affordable housing and attainable housing is urban sprawl. It's just that you drive until you can afford. And that's the traditional method of dealing with affordability. Now, cities, and particularly in my neighborhood, Sparks and Reno, have both adopted higher density and transient-oriented districts and other methods to encourage developers to build in town. It's had limited success. There's still more people that there's just been a limited number of people that have done that. I've done it in the town of Sparks at the what's called the Sparks Marina. We've done quite a few housing there, but it's all went up with the market value. It's none of it. It started out affordable, but it's not affordable today for the definitions that you're using on it. So, and there's a few reasons why urban sprawl doesn't work. One is that it's almost the same labor cost to build a large house as a small house. The costs are very different. It has to do with the construction methods of you're going to do drywall in a house today and it takes you 4 hours, but because of staging, you can't start until in the morning, so you can only get 1 or 2 houses done a day. But if the house were bigger, you'd still do 1 or 2 houses. It just doesn't take that much time. So the construction cost of labor for a small house is more per square foot. So it's, you know, and so the larger houses are more profitable. And guess what? Buyers want bigger houses. And so they're willing to pay the higher prices. And the homeowners who are building in the normal conventional marketplace have one prime goal, and that's to provide for their family, which results in asking for a raise. And so the prices end up going up in order to provide for all the families in the building business. So with that, And then with a higher density, with building a project with higher density, it still ends up with the same families saying, I have to provide for my family, the workers have to provide for their families. That's not going to change, and it should not. So we have a circular process here that won't work. And I would suggest that going through a land trust will work. A land trust is owned by a nonprofit organization, and then you switch the goal of the organization from making money to providing houses. And once the goal is changed, the day-to-day operations that you go through and the decisions that you make when you're building a house, it's not controlled by making a profit. It's controlled by delivering the product. And that's what we need to do, is deliver the product of inexpensive housing to the majority of the people.
Thank you, David. Also, when you're speaking, could you make sure to speak into the mic for our online audience?
Okay.
And could we come back to you? I want to make sure Rick has an opportunity to introduce himself. You know, what you're speaking about is super important, though, because it is the marriage of the private and the public sector working together to make homeownership attainable. I'd like to pass the floor over to El Presidente of the Southern Nevada Home Builders Association. Rick, go ahead.
Well, thank you. And so I feel like I'm a little bit of the fish out of water here, right? So we're a for-profit home builder, in a group of people who are very knowledgeable and savvy about a number of things that affect affordable housing. But we'll talk a little bit more about that and why I hope to be engaged in this conversation. So I'm Rick Barron. I'm the president of Signature Homes. We are a local home builder. We actually own and have built almost 14,000 homes, condominiums, townhomes, apartments here in town. We've been here since 1978. We currently own and operate, self-manage about 1,200 apartment units, about 70 single family for rent units, and we're poised to build about 100 to 150 single family for sale units here next year as well. So we have a bit of a diversity there that you don't normally see in this environment. That said, I'm really happy to be here. I'm thankful to have some people here in person, the people on the internet there through Zoom. Super happy to be here and engaged in this conversation, because I feel like we're starting to see a lot more momentum that is helping the private for-profit builders want to be engaged in this conversation. Just recently, within the last 30 days, one of our local builders here has reached an agreement with Clark County to build an affordable housing project in the Southwest. We're really trying to really move that needle in that direction. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I feel like I'm going to learn more than I'm going to be able to give input on today. And I'm looking forward for us as home builders to be more engaged in the conversation as well. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rick. And thank you, panelists, for joining us to set the stage for why this is so important, why we're here to talk about housing affordability. I'd like to pass a question over to Jeneeah Girma, who's so passionate about this. Jeneeah, could you share for us, why is home ownership so important, not just for individual families, but for the community at large?
Yes, thank you. And then before I get into that, I do want to say I'm happy about this panel and the diversity, not only just in experience and innovation and public and private partnerships. We won't get anywhere in the housing and the affordable housing sector without the combination of those things. So I think whoever put together this group was a dynamic and innovative thinker, and I'm happy to be a part of it. And I'm hoping to learn just as much as I can open minds. Community is a word that we've heard throughout the day, and I believe we'll begin to hear some things that have stuck out to me, or community and unprecedented. Three things about home ownership that is why it's so important to families, of course, is wealth. There are three ways to build wealth historically in this nation, and that is real estate, life insurance, and stocks. That is how That is how wealth is passed on in this community. I could get on my soapbox and talk about how some minority groups have not had the opportunities that others have, but just a small example. College is a double-edged sword. African American women are the most educated demographic in the world, in the country. Because of that, with education comes the other side of that sword, which is student loans. Student loans are one of the biggest hurdles that African Americans and all Americans face to being able to achieve home ownership. So if you take an average person who is making above 80% AMI in Nevada or any state, and you add in a student loan because they have a bachelor's degree or, God forbid, a postgraduate degree, and then you add a car note because they have to have a car to get back and forth to the home, then they are ultimately priced out of the market. That is absurd. It's ridiculous, and it's time for it to change. So in order to build wealth, we need to make those steps to homeownership available through advocacy. One of the groups I mentioned, NAREP, has actually worked with HUD to get student loan payments to be recalculated for FHA financing. So that means that instead of taking 1% or 2% in some examples of the total student loan people have, we are now able to take that, whatever those range income-based repayments are, and be able to factor in your actual payment on your student loan as opposed to the entire amount of your student loan at 1%. So that's an accomplishment. That's a hurdle that we've jumped, and we need to continue to jump over those hurdles. Once we obtain homeownership, the average family sometimes is able to use that equity. Equity gives us choices. It gives us options. It gives us the ability to say, I'm going to pull some money out, or take an equity loan out, or pull some equity out of my house and be able to send my child to school. So then I am changing the generational cycle of leaving college with debt. And now I come out of college and I don't have that debt because my mom and dad were able to buy a house 10 years ago and be able to obtain enough equity to send me to college. That's changing lives, not just today, not just for you and I right now, but for the future and for future generations to come. The reason why that's important is because when people have choices, when they have equity, which gives them options, and when they have an opportunity to build wealth, that right there gives us a sense of community. People take care of their homes better when they live in them. They stay in their homes better when they are in them, when they own them. And with that lack of strength of community becomes stability. What does stability mean? Stability means that I am going to keep my child in the same school, and the guidance counselor that knows them from kindergarten is going to know them through 8th grade and help them to get to the best high school that they can go to. And that high school is going to prepare them for the best college that they can go to. And then when I send them to college, I have money to send them to college, and they're not in debt. So all in all, education, stability, and community is why homeownership is important, not just to the person buying the home, but to their neighbor, to the person that they are going to work with someday, the people their children are going to work with, and the generational cycles continue of growth and development and equity in our communities, in our homes, and not the generational cycle of poverty.
Thank you so much, Jeneeah. That was great. So it looks like we have a question from online. So we're going to figure out what that is right now.
All right. The question is, actually, could you repeat exactly what the recommended change is for how FHA treats student loans for debt calculation? Nia. I'm sorry for sharing.
Yes. Absolutely. So in the past, prior to 2016, it was 2%. 2% of your total debt was calculated against you if you were not currently making payments, if you were in any sort of deferment status, if the amount of your payments on your student loan was not listed on your credit report, then lenders were required to take 2% of your total loans and count that against your debt to income ratio. Most lending programs, my lending program, for example, requires that you have a debt to income ratio less than 45%. After 2016, there was an adjustment made to take that down to 1%. And then with the act that proposed in just April of this year. It now takes that calculation where if you are in a status where your payment is not listed on your credit report, and you can provide documentation that you are making payments and you have a set amount of payments to make, those payments, those exact amount of payments that you make are counted against your debt to income ratio as opposed to the before 1%.
Thank you, Nia, and thank you to the online audience for sharing your questions. So, Nia, you talked a lot about homeownership and the importance of homeownership for families, and we've seen over the last couple of years that the housing prices continue to go up, right? And this definitely benefits folks that own homes, but it keeps folks that don't own homes further away from homeownership. Could you share a little bit about the volatility of the market and help set the stage as we get into the other questions for the panel?
Yes, so the market is volatile right now. And honestly, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't say what it will be next year or the 2 years after that. But what I do know is that this market is cyclical, and it will change and it will correct itself. And over years, things will work out. I say that to say it's not a bad time to buy a home. Diane is not stupid. She is very smart. Over years, as long as she is making her payments, equity, she will accrue equity in her home, and she will have an asset. The same for anyone else who is in person or online and thinking about purchasing a home and not knowing if it's the right time. It's the right time. I share the personal story a lot that Nevada is my home because Nevada is where I became an adult. I moved here after college. I bought my first home here, and I started my family here, but just saying I bought my first home here doesn't at all explain how difficult and how scary and what a roller coaster it was, because I bought my home in the exact opposite time when prices were rapidly decreasing, so much that by the time I got an approval and they sent off the appraisal, I had lost value and I had to go back and forth. I ended up purchasing a home as a short sale and had to negotiate those prices. And I remember my loan officer saying to me, because I was just all I could think about is that I wanted to buy a house. I was going to do anything that I could to buy a house. I was taking advantage of the time that it was a short sale and the amount of time that I was in escrow. And every pay period, I would go up to the title company and I'd give them a check. And my loan officer looked at all the deposits. He said, "Did you buy a house on layaway?" Because I didn't. So however you get there, however you can prepare yourself, this is a good time for you, if you are a home hopeful, to take advantage of the many plans that are coming down the pipe. The American Dream Act, which allows you to take funds very similar to a 529 saving for college, take those funds and put them in an account and hold them as your own down payment towards your own purchasing your own dream. If you don't qualify for down payment assistance, or even if you do qualify for down payment assistance, you want to make sure that you're taking your time to prepare yourself financially. And financial literacy is key, as Diane mentioned. Education of both our home buyers, our home hopefuls, our lenders, and our realtors, to make sure that you are not only ready to obtain home ownership, but sustain home ownership, putting aside extra money for emergencies, for things that you won't be able to call the building manager for because you are the building manager. And so once this market adjusts itself, we don't want anyone to put themselves in a position where they are, eating top ramen and sleeping on an empty floor because they were able to buy a house, which is why we have those debt to income ratios in place. But we do want to make sure that you're taking advantage of all of the down payment assistance, all of the education, and all of the equity acts coming your way to help prepare you for when the market does adjust and we are able to purchase homes, and all of these wonderful builders here are able to provide us with some more affordable housing, that we're able to take advantage of it.
Thank you so much, Nia. I remember back in school, the teacher would always tell me, it's a two-way street. Education's a two-way street, right? Teacher's going to help, but you also have to meet them halfway. Homeownership feels like a four-way street because there's so many different elements at play. There's your responsibility for buying a house, there's the government's role, there's the builder's role. And as we kind of enter these unprecedented times where housing becomes less attainable due to increased pricing, we need innovations brought to the table. And so, David, I'd love to come back to you and ask you a little bit more about how the local stakeholders in this room could utilize land trusts as a way to innovate.
Okay. We talked earlier about the fact that a land trust is usually set up on a method of, on the process of being qualified for 80% of median family income. And I've heard comments, justifiable comments, that what about the rest of the people? And what can we do to get to lower income brackets? A land trust is a way to do that. When you're starting the development of a land trust property, you've got some early investors and you've got a landowner who wants to know something's going to get built there. And so with that, you do a business plan that sets at 80% of median family income. Your early stakeholders will contribute to it. And then you get closer to the end and you get to the point where you're in construction. You don't have your home buyers yet. And then you pull out the community. And then you pull out the rest of the community and say, wait, we could turn this into a 60% of 60% homeowner, or wait, we could get down to a 50% homeowner if you just put in some extra cash now, and we can drive the price down. Once you have a property that is in construction, everything is it's moving forward. Everybody knows this is a real deal, and you could drop the prices either with community involvement of parents or churches or anybody else in the community or a government agency. So there's a great opportunity there to get into a lower into the lower income stratus.
Thank you, David. And you know, I'm also new to real estate. Would you mind to share, you know, what is a land trust? Give us that definition, and then I have one more question for you.
Okay, yeah, a land trust is a entity within a nonprofit. It's a single purpose entity. Its only job is to own land and lease it to a person who buys the house that's on the land. The land trust builds a house. They retain the fee interest in the house, but they sell the use of the land and the building to the homeowner. You've got the right to nail your pictures wherever you want on this house because it's your wall. And so, and it's your garage, and what you do in your garage, subject to local ordinance, is okay with the landowner, which is a land trust. After 99 years, your lease is up. I don't think there's anybody here that'll make that, because you'll have learned more from these ladies and the programs you're going to go through to move on and leave room for another person. Because the next person that comes in, you sell the house to them at the same affordable rates, but it's based on if the income has went up, and usually it does. If income goes up, then you can sell it for a higher price. You get your share of the profit of that higher price, and you also get your debt retirement for every month you are making a payment on the house.
David, that sounds great. That sounds awesome, like a way for folks to be able to buy homes because you're removing the cost of that land and you're giving people easier access to start building equity. What are some of the pitfalls that professionals should just be aware about as they think about building land trusts into their strategy as a nonprofit or as a builder?
The pitfalls are falling away fast. There's not very many of them anymore. There's some technical changes that should be made in the NRS, and there's some laws that may, with very small doable tweaking, can be made so it allows more people to take advantage of this. But it's the pitfalls are that you have to explain to the homeowner that they can't cash out and take all the money. They can't move it to market rate, to full market rate. And so you have to recognize that going in, and you have to be, when you're ready to move on. You've got some money with that, and allow somebody else to take over that house and start over again with a new 99-year lease. It will be forever affordable.
That's incredible. Thank you so much, David, for letting us understand that a little bit more. I want to pass the floor over to Diane. And Diane, we're hearing a lot about advocacy. We're also hearing a little bit about innovation. What are some of the things that housers in the room, the housing professionals in the room, can learn about in order to bring new programs to the forefront? Like how does that process happen? And is there anything else that's top of mind in that space for you?
Thank you, Elias. So I want to talk a little bit about, I know we're going to address obstacles, but when we talk about new programs, we have to think about how do you bring a new program, because there's going to be an obstacle, right? That's the whole purpose of having a new program. So obstacles look different for every person. We obviously have the big elephant in the room, the lack of affordable housing stock. Some great ideas to talk about how to tackle that. I know you're going to have some to address too, which I'm excited about. But there are statistics that don't necessarily fall under the how do we address this emergent need right now. Like, for example, Freddie Mac shared from a survey of realtors that, of course, 83% of those say that there are not enough homes in the price range that people are looking, obviously. 66% are dealing with demand and supply of housing in their local market, and 55% are dealing with competitive or multiple offers on a property. And of course, in Nevada, that's probably double in all those cases. But are those the only obstacles? No, absolutely not. There are other obstacles facing people, ones that already existed yesterday, ones that exist today, and ones that are going to continue to exist. We've touched on some of those already, but poor credit is an obstacle for 28% of prospective homebuyers. That has nothing to do with our housing stock. 6% of homebuyers report language barriers as a reason why they have not purchased a home. So we have a responsibility. Those are things we can do something about. We need to help get people into a situation where they're educating themselves, but we do need to talk about programs, right? We need to look at what kind of programs we can be bringing to the table to help people. I've been having a lot of conversations with Bill Brewer, the executive director at Nevada Rural Housing, and even the folks over at Nevada Housing Division. We have an opportunity to bring in smaller incremental programs to address needs. And when you say smaller, you think, well, how is that going to make a big impact? But if you don't start with some of the smaller needs, you're never going to make any impact of any kind. If you can help one family with a program, then that opens the door for many families to be helped, and the cycle can continue from there. So if you were to ask 100 renters today, if there was a home available in your price range, would you buy it today? If they say no, well, why the heck not? That's the answer we need to know. So to develop some of the programs that we need, no matter how small they might be or how big they might be, if we partner, we need to know the answers to some of these things. So we need to be getting some information on a variety of scales, small and big. If we ask our home builders, what are you doing right now to help make new homes affordable for first-time homebuyers and accessible to first-time homebuyers? Just kidding. So if they're not proactively doing something right now, what should they be doing? We need to develop a program to work with our partners in new home development. Because if there's a family that can afford the home, but then they can't go in and compete with cash buyers or those that are putting $200,000 down, that first-time homebuyer may qualify, but if they can't get the home, how frustrating is that? So we need to be working with our developers to have a first-time homebuyer program where if they come in with their pre-qual letter from Home as Possible or Home at Last and say, we are qualified for this program, we have done all the education, we are ready. In fact, they're probably more ready than a lot of other people coming in that maybe are going up to a bigger house that they probably can't afford anyway. then we need to make sure that they have access to those homes and that they're not getting squeezed out just because someone next to them has $200,000 to put down. So who should be working together? So when you look in this room and you look to the left and right, especially in the big room there, there's a lot of smart people here, right? Oh my gosh. One thing I have observed, and I think you were the first gentleman I talked to, is there is a real authentic interest in helping address how to make homes affordable for people, whether it's through rental or homeownership. I care about homeownership, but we need to be putting our brain power together. We need to be looking at how we can bring programs together, no matter how small they are, make them scalable and accessible to people, but we got to find out what they are. So we've got a couple ideas, and some of those that we're just throwing around. I got to steal, there's this analogy that Steve Acroft with the Nevada Housing Division shared with me, and I told him, I warned him, I'm stealing it. Nevada Rural Housing Authority, which Bill, if you were in the previous session, shared that we serve really the rural area, so it's a much smaller population than the Reno and Las Vegas, but we're like the seasoning that sprinkles across the state and fills the gaps where it's needed. Those gaps are critical gaps that must be filled, and so it's those smaller programs that are going to actually come in and help change people's lives. We need to do things like have student loan programs. Can we mortgage those into a house where there's equity? You know, is there an option for us to be able to do that so people can afford the home and they're not burdened by a student loan debt as the only barrier to getting into a home? We need to look at things like if someone is in a lease right now and they've got 8 months left on their lease, is there an early lease termination type of program we can help people so that they don't have that on top of having to save for down payment or other costs? We've got a lot of challenges with building homes, right, with stock. So we're looking at maybe even bringing some townhomes in, preserving affordability through a couple of different options. But those new home builders, we've got to sit down and have the conversations about what can we do today to help people that qualify be able to get their offer approved. We need to look at things like rehabilitating some of the homes that we have in our stock. We've got houses. If we've got programs, and we do, that can go in and remodel or rehabilitate these, make them energy efficient, people will want to buy those homes. They want to stay in the communities that they live in, but they don't want to buy a piece of junk house they can't afford to fix up. We've got to have programs available to help people get into that house, fix it up, make it nice, revitalize the communities. So there's a lot of things we can do, and I don't want to steal all of the time, so I'm going to pause there because I know you have another question coming.
I do. Diane, that's fantastic. And I want to come back to you about, a common theme that you're focused on, which is collective impact, right? The collective impact of the role the government is playing, the role the housing nonprofits are playing, the real estate professionals. But you've also raised some really good points about the builder's role. And I want to pass the floor over to Rick and ask this important question, which is, what is the impetus for developers to get involved with building affordable housing?
So let me first tell you that the Southern Nevada Home Builders Association represents almost all of the local builders, right? Or excuse me, all of the builders that build here in the Valley, and they vary in scale, right? So when I speak to you, I'm going to try to speak to my role as the president for the association for this year, as well as who we are as a local private builder. And what I will tell you is that the large builders that are here in town that have the lion's share of the homes that are being built, they're very good at what they do, but it taxes all of their resources to do it in the manner that they currently do it in, right? That's their business plan. They are a well-oiled machine that works very hard to do that. So in a way, it's a bit of a turning an aircraft carrier to try to get those builders to refocus and to use their very valuable human resources towards affordable housing. So I think with the amount of traction that we've been seeing lately, in that the discussion has been brought to a different level, where we can start to see that is more of the private builders that can take that role and try to show where there is profitability and being able to bring affordable housing, attainable housing, which is often a word we use. It's roughly defined as 80% of the median income can afford that home. I think that's where the opportunity lies, in addition to educating ourselves with these programs that are available. And it is tough to get people to focus on these things when they're already very busy with their business plan and trying to do what they've been, told to do, right? Or what they feel is their need. So I think that's one of the things that needs to happen is more engagement and try to find the players like the Callison Homes, who just recently did the agreement with the county. We're actually starting to see some of this get traction. We just need a starting place. We need these discussions.
Thank you, Rick. And I think this flows back and forth quite nicely. So I'm going to pass it back to Diane and ask you the question for the audience that's here. I mean, how can we engage with the developers? How do we reach across the aisles of the public and the private sector to start developing more affordable housing and deal with the obstacles that you brought up?
Well, I think Rick totally touched on that. And I think that's exactly what we need to be doing, is looking at who has a door that's open for us to sit down and talk to, and who are the parties that should be in the room at the table. Who has the ability to affect change? What would our electives, how would they play the role in this? I think when we have people that have kind of decision-making power in some cases can come in and sit down, and collectively we can approach how to solve some of these issues. We are not going to come in and build a new community of all affordable homes and solve the issue overnight. That's not what we're trying to do here. What we're trying to do here is get one family into a home they can afford at a time. And that's going to look a little bit different for each person. Is that my yellow flag to stop talking?
It looks like we've got a question from the audience.
Okay, we have a question from the, I see
Yeah,
a yellow
let's
paddle
dive
come
in.
up.
Thank you.
I am trained really well. I stopped talking.
Okay, we have a question from the virtual audience that I think is a good time to ask this one. So, Arturo, he'd like to hear from panelists what they think of set-asides. If a developer wants to build more dense homes or higher or wider multifamily developments, that a certain portion, 20, 25, 30%, for example, be set aside as affordable for 80% less of AMI, as an idea. Thoughts on that?
So I'd love to answer this question for you. I think first and foremost, there are a number of incentive-based programs out there that are available that we need to start utilizing. The best way to get a public-private partnership in building affordable housing is to look for ways to incent the builders to do what they do best, right? Bring that to the table first. Let's see if we can utilize those tools and push that idea forward. Because I think the idea of bringing in inclusionary zoning and set-asides is a default last choice that we should be thinking about.
So it looks like we've got some questions coming up from the audience. Ella, could we get your help to facilitate these questions? We'll go to this gentleman in the
While we're
front.
getting ready for some questions, I do just want to add one thing I didn't say that I think is important is we need to not duplicate programs that we already have. I think that's something really important because there's been a lot of conversation coming down either at the federal level or even in this room. If you walk through or other rooms, people will talk about, well, we need more down payment assistance programs. We have the most phenomenal down payment assistance programs in Nevada that you can't make a better down payment assistance program. But a lot of people aren't familiar with what kind of programs we actually have. We can do a better job to actually line those out, put a matrix together, put more word out on either online or in different resources. One thing that we're doing at Nevada Rural this year is we have an initiative to get on all the county municipal websites and social media pages, partner with our local government officials and communities so that we are helping or having them help serve as a resource when people go locally to their social service office or whatever and say, how do I buy a home? We have to be everywhere where people go to look, because every first-time home buyer is a first-time home buyer. They don't know where to look, right? So we always have to repeat that message, but we don't need to be duplicating programs. Thank you for letting me say that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing.
So it's my turn?
Yes, please.
Not only in addition to that, but you also need to advertise and make available pre and post-purchase counseling, because you have an opportunity to create the home buyers. And if you had a pool of, say, 20 to 25, you're saying you want to have 25,000 African-American home buyers. If you have someone who did the pre and the post-purchase counseling, walked them through the process, talked about the non-traditional forms of credit, helped them get ready, look at their credit report, pull those things, you can actually effectuate change. I ran a first-time home buyer program for 10 years, and I got probably over probably 200 people in homes. I work for US Bank and we had our own. So you can do that. You can do that. And also you need to market. Everybody talks about down payment assistance, but there's been 2 people here. You guys are here right now. They didn't even know down payment assistance existed. I talked to them about it. I got a card from someone. The folk with down payment assistance don't do a good job of marketing what they have. Even Nevada Housing Division, and we work with the Nevada Housing Division. So you have to tell people, number one, if I'm going to be a homeowner, you have to tell people what's in it for them. You talked about wealth building. You have to look at not just education and student loans, but you have many people in the service industry here who can purchase homes. And so if you have a pool, if you get those people ready, you have a pool through Nevada Housing Services in different places of 25 to 30 people, and you go to a home builder and you say, look, we have this pool of people. What can you do to help them afford homes? I think you can make some headway. And I have a question to Mr. Dahl regarding this land trust thing. Home ownership is the biggest purchase that anyone will ever make. Okay. And so in doing that, if I'm a land trust, you said I can't take, if I want to move up to a bigger home, I can't take the money with me. I can't take it all with me. How much of it can they take?
They can take they have to leave enough behind. That's easier to say it this way. They have to leave enough behind for the next person to be able to come in at the same income level, whatever that is, at the same income level and buy the house.
In your experience, what has that been? Because when we did this, something similar to this with Clark County, at 15 years, it was forgiven. But when the homeowner reached the 15-year mark, it was forgiven. They could take all of the money and they could move on to a bigger and better home, which we did. So when you say they need to leave enough behind, what is enough? If I'm walking away, if I've been in the house for 10 or 15 years and I'm only walking away with a $10,000 or $20,000 equity, that doesn't seem like a whole lot. So do you have a figure? What has your experience been in that regard?
It's difficult to project forward, but it's easy to read backwards. And so if you go back 10 years, Nick, maybe you can help me with the numbers here, but it's if you bought 10 years ago, or maybe 10 years ago in this year is not the right year to be buying, because
Do you have a comment related to this?
if you bought 11 years ago. But if things go up 6% a year, you can do the math. It turns out to be, the examples I've seen are for a $200,000 house, you might walk with $75,000 or $80,000, something like that. That's part of the program, is to understand that on the front end.
Right.
And then there's two things you're doing here. One is you're preserving the household. If in your example that you talked about, that house is no longer affordable in 10 years or 15 years, or whatever the sunset is, it's gone. We've lost it. We can all keep our pictures of it, but that house is no longer affordable. And well, no, it's that house that you did it with is no longer affordable today. Okay,
Could we jump in over here? Somebody wants to chime in on this very topic, and then we'll move on to the next set of questions.
Yeah, so just to answer the question about the formula with the community land trust, the way that we have it is pretty simple. So that the equity would be 3 parts. The first would be the appreciation based on the area median income. So if the home, or if the area median income goes up 10%, the value of the home can only go up 10%. It's not tied to market rate. So that would be one piece. Then the other piece would be equity built from the mortgage payments. And then the third would be any down payment. With the model that we have with the community land trust, we don't require any down payment, but the buyers are responsible for the closing cost.
I love the passion. I love the passion that's here. We have a couple minutes left. I want to make sure that folks get an opportunity to engage. We have a gentleman up front who's next. Ella, if we could give him the mic, and then we'll go to Michelle after. Okay, great.
All right, this question is for Rick. Michelle with Neighborhood Housing Services of Southern Nevada. We love Homemade. You guys have done some really great things for our organization. Have you guys thought outside of the box instead of doing a traditional build the way you guys usually do, like a stick build. We already know lumber is going up. We have pushed the envelope with some of the municipalities as far as, I know nobody likes it, but some do, container housing. I met with a company called Boxable. I don't think it's going to solve the problem. I think it has a lot to do with financing. But have we thought about doing something outside of the normal traditional build as far as builders?
So I'm going to answer this a little. I'm going to take your question and modify it just a little bit. I think that what you're really leading to is creativity and innovation. And I think that while one of the specific ideas you had, maybe it hasn't come across, I think what we're looking for is, look, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go back to a saying, it takes a village. And I think that we need innovation. We need our zoning boards to look at innovation and allowing diversity in housing stock and what we build. I think we need densities in the right locations. I think that's very important. I think we need to combat some of the NIMBYism that occurs when you have people that want a particular type of housing next to them. And we need to have ways to transition housing so that it can accommodate their concerns as well as increase densities. I think with some of those things, I think we could bring back some of the diversity we actually had in the pre-recession period, where home builders were starting to look at 3-story homes, higher density neighborhoods, more attached houses, and you had the apartment side of things and condominiums going to mid-rises, et cetera. So I like the idea of innovation that may or may not be one of those particular ideas.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
I have 3 things that I want to talk about. The first is you're talking about the down payment assistance. My question is how come we're not asking the realtors as a part of their relicensing programs when they have to get recertified to know about these programs to push them out to their customers? 90% of the realtors, 90% of the people who go to buy a house, especially first-time home buyers, they go to a realtor. That's my first question.
Yes, so Nevada Housing Division actually does provide a continuing education course for realtors, a general elective course. It is strongly encouraged. We actually do our outreach sometimes with home buyers and being able to get to where everyone is to let them know about our programs. Well, we can always improve on that. Our realtor is actually spot on. We're affiliate members with the Las Vegas Realtor Association, so no realtor actually leaves without being sworn in and giving a packet about this continuing education course that we offer. We also offer a online crash course regarding our program, which is about 40 minutes long with a high-level overview. And then we also provide realtors with an opportunity to market themselves on our website, which gets about 15,000 hits each month. And we have about 1,200 realtors that are registered on our website. So as far as our outreach to realtors, we can't necessarily, Nevada Housing Division is separate from Real Estate Division. We can't require that they take the course, but they're giving every opportunity to learn about it.
If I can add to that question real quick, I think the question is whether these things are gaining traction. Right?
Could we
Because we've already been hearing. We've been hearing about the education part of it. Is it starting to gain traction, or are we getting the word out, right? And that's what I'm hoping is occurring with these type of conversations, right? That we're spreading the word.
My second question is, I'm listening to the housing, and I just heard about some exotic housing, the container housing. And that's the second time I've heard about it today. Is anybody talking about the manufactured or mobile home housing? Is that part of this affordable housing program?
Your name is Wayne, right?
Jeff.
Jeff, sorry, I totally messed that up. Thank you, Jeff. We talked earlier, and I appreciate your question. So Nevada Rural Housing Authority, given the fact that we serve rural Nevada, we do a lot of manufactured housing, given that is often what families can afford as their first home, even though I will say our programs are not restricted to first-time home buyers. But we do about 20 to 25% of our homes are manufactured homes right now. But that's, of course, based on availability. We're seeing that slide now because people who are in those homes are not going to give them up. So they're not listing them. So that is declining right now. But when it was our active market and those homes were getting listed, we did a lot of manufactured homes. I am very intrigued about listening to the idea of how we could help people who want to buy a home in a rented land situation. I think that's an option we should be looking at. We're going to explore everything that we can. Another program option that we want to look at too, in terms of down payment assistance, the more we can do together, the bigger impact we can make. We need to be looping in our employers as additional resources, both small and large. They're, of course, wanting to attract people to stay and invest in their business and plant roots. So everything from the mining industry, healthcare, schools, we need to get people at the business level invested in helping their employees stay and plant roots. And if we can do like a down payment assistance match program, we can help accomplish that and make those dollars go a whole lot farther. So that's a couple things we can do.
Next thing I wanted to talk about is we keep talking about building new homes. And as we know, in all of our communities, we have homes that are dilapidated or vacant. Are there any programs that are going to help producers and or developers like myself who will go in, purchase a home, renovate it, and then sell it to somebody and make it affordable? Are there any programs that will help us do that?
Yes. And there are hopefully going to be more. So we can talk offline. I think we're just about out of time, but those are things that we're continuously looking to do and expand. And it is going to be always a necessity to keep the homes that we have in good shape and available to people to purchase.
Thank you so much, Diane. Thank you, Jeff, for your questions. I know we're running out of time, so I just want to leave for 2 more questions and then we'll close out of here. Why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. I'm David Goldwater. Rick, we live in a valley here in Southern Nevada. Our local governments are, they thrive on fees and growth, and the growth that comes with building and housing, and it funds our infrastructure. It funds some of our social programs as well, funds these local governments. Can you talk a little bit about the costs, those fees, and how they contribute to housing, and sort of, while it's good for growth, probably adds a little bit to our affordable housing problem?
Yeah, it's well, I can certainly speak to where the costs lie. We know that that regulatory requirements probably are somewhere in the $15,000 to $20,000 for the typical, entry level brand new home. I think I really would like to talk about what we've done, where growth actually helps pay for the social programs that you mentioned and a couple of other programs as well. Within the Southern Nevada Lands Act, right? Public Lands Act, SNPLMA is the acronym there. And by the way, we've got a new version of that our Nevada delegation is trying to push through the U.S. Congress right now. All of the funds that those land sales generate, a large portion of that, well over $4 billion so far since that act was enacted. I believe it was 93 when the act came about. $4 billion has been spent locally for conservation efforts, education, and a number of other social programs. So I do encourage people to get educated as to where some of that money goes and what development does. And a large part of this, by the way, for-profit development, but that those proceeds are reallocated to the state is a big factor. So hopefully that answers your question somewhat.
This is not exactly the same answer there, but I just want to add that at Nevada Rural Housing Authority, we act much like a private organization in that we have to generate our own revenue to fund our programs for most of them, except for Section 8 with the HUD voucher situation. But for our down payment assistance, for every down payment assistance loan that our partners do with us, that gives us the ability to then come in and serve in our other areas like building multifamily housing. So it is something we have to generate our own money. This is not something we're just taking federal dollars and then where do we want to spend it? It doesn't work like that. So, so much like a private organization, we have to get out there and raise the dough as well.
Thank you. We have time for one more question.
My name's Darren Prue. I'm a developer, and one of my projects is a manufactured home project. And you go to manufactured or factory-built homes because you want them to be more affordable. I don't know who's listening on Zoom and who might be here, but there's one thing that the state could do. When you hire a contractor to work on a house, they're a licensed contractor. But if you try and hire that contractor to work on a manufactured home, they're not licensed to do that. So instead of being able to, in the project that I have going right now, I could call probably 10 heating and air conditioning contractors, but there were only 2 that were licensed on your manufactured housing. and they were extremely expensive. So we tried to get one of our guys that was already licensed, a general contractor, to become licensed by manufactured housing, and it has been about 12, 13 weeks, and he's already licensed. So eliminating contractors' extra burden of having to get licensed to work on manufactured housing should be done immediately. The poorest of the poor are not able to go to the open market and get contractors. They can only go to contractors that have a manufactured license. It's a government overreach that is hurting it's hurting the poor, and it should be eliminated. The contractors that are licensed by the Contractors Board are skilled, bonded, educated, and licensed. Why should somebody to work on a manufactured home require an extra burden? It should be eliminated quick.
I can answer that question. There are some differences between stick-built housing and manufactured that need to be addressed. For example, most manufactured houses are designed so that they cannot have any other structures resting on them because they're just not engineered to that. So some of the small things that have to be addressed should be addressed in manufactured housing.
Contractors that are licensed are skillful. They're made out of wood, drywall, electrical. They're the exact same. I'm dealing with them every day. And I know you are too, sir. The contractors that want to keep that license in place are the ones that are already licensed, because it keeps competition out of the marketplace.
Well, for example, the water heater. Water heaters for manufactured housing are different than water heaters for a stick-built house if they're gas water heaters. And a contractor who's working with them needs to know the difference. I have corrected a number of water heaters that have been placed in a house, in a manufactured house that did not belong there and didn't work right.
Jeff, the heating and air, I'll make this real quick. The heating and air in this building is different, takes the same license. The heating and air that's in an apartment building is different, takes the same license. Single family home, same license. Why require a manufacturer to be additionally licensed? It just doesn't make any sense. But we can talk offline, Jeff.
One thing I really love about this space, y'all, we're here for the Nevada Housing Coalition, and it's meant to bring all of our diverse voices together. These are part of the discussions we have to have. Michelle has a couple words to share, and then we'll wrap up.
So I'm going to say Wells Fargo is great because we actually did 2 rounds of lift money for down payment assistance. I am going to continue to reach out to the banks to help. I would love for for the banks to come out with a down payment. We deployed, I think, almost 15 million. The last round, we did it in 2 years. We just don't have enough, guys. I can tell you that. And even at $7,500 a pop, at $417 median home price, it's not enough. Not right now with what's going on with inflation.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. We need to make those programs parable with existing programs because there's no reason we can't layer.
Yeah, because it really does help. That, and we talk about advocacy and kind of the system being broke. Can you guys help me tell everybody else, if you're going to get an FHA loan, why not require homebuyer education? I'm a HUD housing counseling agency. I still cannot connect the dots why a first-time homebuyer is not required to get homebuyer education if you're going to get a government loan. Help me understand that. Yeah,
So for our down payment assistance programs, both NIA's through the Nevada Housing Division and Nevada Rural, it is mandatory to take homebuyer education.
But it's not a HUD housing counseling agency.
It is preferred that they do, but it is not required. You're correct. Yeah.
Could you pass the mic to Nia?
Do you guys have money? Does Home is Possible has money today?
Home is Possible always has money.
Okay, so that's awesome. I love that.
High five.
And I think Culinary has money. Yes, we do. Yay. Always has money.
Awesome. Do the panelists have any final words to share? Well, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you, everybody. There's going to be a cash bar out in the courtyard. What I want to encourage everybody to do is to not let the conversation end here. and to use this space as a way to collaborate across all of our different organizations.